Hi, my name's Keith Cooper of Northlight Images. This is one of a series of short videos I'm doing about specific prints, specific images, a little bit of background on them, some of the technical stuff, some of the why I took the photograph, what I was doing at the time, and various stuff like that. There's a specific playlist just for this topic. Anyway, this one here, the yard. Well, you can give away here, but it's written on the building. One of my architectural photographs. This is interesting because I actually was commissioned by the architects of this to take photographs of this building. And I've got nighttime photos, I've got some daytime photos, got quite a range of photos. And they said, oh, if you get any others, just let us know. And this is part of De Montfort University in Leicester, and it's an area, I use this area when I'm testing lenses. You'll have seen it in my videos and articles and various things like that. Anyway, I had the Laowa 15mm shift lens to test, and this picture, it's been resampled up in using gigapixel AI to print this large because it was taken on the EOS RP that I'm actually using for the filming here. So it's been enlarged somewhat. Images like this work very well in gigapixel AI. Could comfortably print this at a fair old size. There's lots of crisp detail in it, which that software works well on. Now, this picture was taken as part of the review. I contacted the architects and said, oh, I've got a few photos, extra ones I've taken, with a wider lens. This is a 15mm lens on 35mm full frame camera. And, I was lucky, I looked out the window and saw what the weather was like. And we had this intense, deep blue sky. Couple that with the sunshine, the white building and everything like that, and it just works. Now, if I took this photo a few minutes later, this shadow would have moved round and might have obscured the detail here. Little details of composition. I've made sure I've left a gap between this pillar just to show that it's separate from that. But the real thing about this particular one is that, I say, it was a shift lens. Now, normally I use a shift lens for architectural work. Shift the lens upwards means you can keep the camera level, and it stops buildings leaning over backwards. If you point the camera up, you get your buildings looking like this. And the classic use of a shift lens is keep the camera level, lift it up. So I've pointed the lens upwards. The camera still is level. Now, the optical axis from the sensor, i.e. the middle of the sensor, think of a line coming sort of 90 degrees directly out of the sensor, that is actually here. So by giving vertical shift, I've dropped the horizon, but this is not in the middle of the picture. That's because I've also used diagonal shift, or in this instance, that direction. So the camera is pointing here, and I've shifted the lens to give the composition that brings in this lovely sky, brings in these white bits, the reflections here. I've managed by doing this also to keep the camera straight so that these lines here, horizontals, are also, it just controls the perspective. Hence the name for Nikon lenses like this, where they're called perspective controlled lenses. They don't really, the only way you can change perspective truly is to move the camera, but that's what they're known as. So we get some nice good horizontal lines here. They just give a sense of depth. As I say, I've got other views that I've taken of this that work perfectly well, but this was one, and I sent these off to the architects and said, oh, I've just had a new lens to test. This is the job I did for you recently. Do you like any of these? And they went, whoa, we love them. What did they like? This is in the UK, and we have bright white buildings and a deep blue sky. And it really was. It was one of those days where it was like that. Not a cloud in the sky. But I say, timing, control of the shadows, camera position to get the viewpoint I wanted, and then the lens, and say this was the Laowa 15mm, just pushed off to one side. It's like diagonal. Now, diagonal shift is a lot less commonly used. People sometimes use shift left and right and stitch images for panoramics, or typically you'll use it, as I mentioned, just with vertical shift. The one that people have the difficulty in thinking about and thinking when to use it is diagonal shift like that. I do not offhand remember which printer this was printed on, but yeah, it's printed on roll paper. It's a sort of Barita style paper. If I remember rightly, I was testing a printer at the time. I'd have to have a look from the timings and that. This has just gone into my collection of prints. Some of you may remember it from my old office. It used to be on the wall there. Haven't got space for that at the moment. So this is just a temporary setup I've got here in our new house until I have somewhere I can actually do stuff like this in the office. But I'm going to be doing more of these because in the process of moving, I've got a huge great box of large prints that I've kept for various reasons. And I just wanted to be able to show a little bit more. Yes, the technical stuff makes a difference, but knowing the technical stuff, seeing that and that bit of good luck, blue skies like that. It worked and helped get me more work. So not only did the architects like it and want to use it, and yeah, I'm a commercial photographer, so they paid for it, but yeah, it works nicely. Anyway, I hope that's of interest. If you've got any questions, please do let me know. As I say, I'm going to do loads more of these. I've got a box full of these prints to go through, so there you go. Thanks for watching. Hope that was of interest. Bye.